our challenges into opportunities. Exactly, we are doing. I think all universities, colleges are doing the same. I think we are implementing the suggestions given by our beloved Prime Minister, because now all higher education institutions in the country are going for online mode of education. That means we are transforming our challenges into opportunities. This itself is a documentary evidence. And in NAC also, we are doing the similar thing, because we are also transforming our challenges into opportunities. Because earlier we were busy with so many other tasks. Now, because of this COVID-19 pandemic situation, we thought that we should reach out as many stakeholders as possible in different parts of the country. That's why in different parts of the country, different officers are taking initiatives, and we are inviting different higher education institution stakeholders to participate in this type of webinar to get more information about various nitty-gritties of quality assurance. Because it is a very dry subject, very complicated, confusing subject sometimes. It is not so, because if it is in a science discipline, it's altogether different, because it is 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. But in quality assurance field, it depends on your articulation, depends on our perspective, depends on the collection of your documentary evidences, and also the moment you collect documentary evidences, it will not suffice. You have to showcase your documentary evidences. It depends on your innovativeness, depends on your creative bent of mind. That's why quality assurance is altogether a different field, and definitely it is not the cup of tea for every academician. If you have some inclination, if you have some interest in quality assurance, then only you can deliver. Otherwise, it will look like a bigger challenge. Once if you start enjoying, it will become a passion in your life. Then every day you start looking at maybe NAC website or literature pertaining to quality assurance. Because right now, national education policy has been already launched. All of us are aware, and this is a very, very important policy. This is a student-friendly policy, because in my opinion, students are the most important stakeholders in higher education. And for students only, this policy has been launched, that after 34 years, because last education policy came in 1986. Then thereafter, no education policy came into existence. Now, after 34 years, I think this was very much important, very valuable national education policy has been launched by Government of India. And I think all of us are very much blessed. Maybe I think some of our senior colleagues might have missed these implementation of these policies. But now, once if it is implemented, maybe I think some of you are very much senior, you may not get benefit. At least maybe definitely your children and our brothers and sisters, definitely they are going to reap a good deal of benefit from this national education policy. Because this is very, very flexible, and there is no rigidity at all. Because in the earlier higher education system, if particular student enters into a degree, in between, if student leaves, he was not getting any certificate, there was no documentary evidence at all. But now, trend has been changed. As per the national education policy is concerned, even if a student leaves after the completion of 1 year's degree program, he will get a certificate. Then if he completes 2 years, he will get diploma certificate. 3 years, then you will get degree certificate. Then after the completion of, because now most of the degrees would be converted into 4 years degree program. Because right now, as all of you know, it is in India, it is 3 years degree program, especially BA, BSc, BCom. Most of these degrees, especially apart from this professional degree programs like engineering or agriculture, some of these programs might be for 4 years. But apart from all these things, all traditional programs are for a period of 3 years. That's why they are planning to bring these programs also into the uniformity, because national qualification framework also they are planning to launch, because in most of the countries this national qualification framework is there. And if you go to US, that is United States of America, most of the degree programs are for a period of 4 years. Now I will tell you one important advantage of this accreditation. See, now Osmania University has been accredited with A grade, or I think A plus grade. That is a very good thing. But do you know what is the advantage for our students? There is a great advantage, because especially when your students want to go to US, because especially in Hyderabad, most of the families, many students would be going abroad. Maybe in COVID-19 situation, the trend might be different, but otherwise in the earlier situation, before pre-COVID situation, at least in every family, one or the other family member used to go to US for higher studies. At that point of time, most of the American universities were asking our Indian students to do 1 year bridge program or crash program, because most of our degree programs were for a period of 3 years. But in US, it is for 4 years. That's why they wanted to bridge the gap, and they were asking our students to do 1 year program. But now most of the American universities have realized the benefits of this accreditation in India. Now they are not asking this 1 year bridge program from our students if they want to do post-graduation in America. Now, but only condition is these students should be from A grade accredited institutions, A grade and above. That is the highest grade should be there. For example, Osmania University, all your students are eligible. Straight away they can go for post-graduation without wasting that 1 year's for bridge program or crash program. Because you know, in America, higher education is not subsidized like ours. Because in India, higher education is highly subsidized, especially in the government higher education institutions. There, for everything, we have to pay through our nose. It is not so easy, because hostel accommodation is expensive, tuition fees is expensive, everything is expensive in America, because we will be earning in rupees and spending in dollars. That itself will be a challenge, and saving 1 year, precious year, I think definitely it will be helpful to our students to save time and money. That itself would be one of the advantages. And also, you know, as per national education policy is concerned, is very flexible. Now students can do their programs depending upon their desire, their choice, because multiple entry and multiple exit would be there as per national education policy. If they are planning to go to some industry for some experience after the completion of first year degree, it's possible. And because they have to, they would be doing some minimum number of credits. And now by chance, parents might be getting transferred to some other city in India, maybe from Bangalore to Bombay, or maybe Delhi or Kolkata. At that point of time, even if their parents get shifted to some other city, at that point of time, they can join to that any other institution in that city, and they can do some more credits, and totally, if they complete minimum number of credits, that can be deposited in ABC, that is Academic Bank of Credit. Now they are planning to establish this Academic Bank of Credit. It is just like our SB account or current account. It is just like any other bank account. Maybe for every student, this Academic Bank of Credit would be created. And the moment they do, maybe say for example in Bangalore, particular student might be doing say 20 credits. That can be deposited into ABC, that's Academic Bank of Credit. Then afterwards, maybe parents might be shifted to Hyderabad. In Hyderabad, they may join some maybe some Nizam College. Then they can do maybe 20 credits. Then very next year, the parent might be shifted to Delhi. Then Delhi also, he might be doing some credits, say another 20 credits or 30 credits. Put together, if they complete minimum number of credits, all credits would be deposited to Academic Bank of Credit. Then ultimately, when they complete more number of credits from whichever the institution they complete, they can go to that institution, they can ask for the degree certificate. By chance, they might be completing 40% of the credits from Bangalore. Then they can come to Bangalore University and they can ask for degree certificate. That is the beauty. But right now that is not there. But as per National Education Policy 2020 is concerned, that type of freedom is there. And also they are giving a lot of emphasis for the skills development. And because earlier, because most of our students, they are interested in some getting good marks or getting some degrees. I think that's why, as rightly pointed out by registrar of this Uthman University, that many of our students may become unemployable because they may not acquire minimum skills, because in industry they may not bother for our degrees, because if we have specific skill, if we can deliver certain things in the industry, you would be accepted. Because maybe I think for the minimum requirement be a degree, but if you have adequate skill, definitely industry would accept you, and industry would be paying very good decent salary to those students. Because that's why now in new education policy they are giving more emphasis on the skills development among the students, because that's why this is very this education policy is very important. And now they are planning to identify the top 100 universities across the globe. Maybe some of the top 100 universities may come over to India and they can establish their campuses in the Indian soil. That's why instead of going to US or Australia or UK, just like that, our students can be in our own country and they can join these international campuses, and they can get those degrees sitting in India itself. That is the beauty. And at the same time, we also have many very good higher education institutions, and that means our higher education institutions also can establish offshore campuses across the globe. That is the beauty. And also, as per one of the schemes of Government of India, that is graded autonomy. If your university comes under category 1 university, the category 1 means if it gets A++ grade, then you can start programs of your choice, not only within the country, even outside the country also. That means in the offshore campuses, you can start your own programs of your choice, that too without any approval from any of the regulatory bodies. That is the beauty. And at the same time, by any chance, if your university misses this category 1 status, if it gets category 2 status, if it scores anywhere between 3.25 and 3.5 CGPA, then it will be considered as category 2 university as per the graded autonomy scheme. At that point of time also, your university can start programs of your choice, the two without the permission from any of the regulatory bodies. But only thing is, you may not be able to start offshore campuses across the globe. That is the only clause. That's why accreditation is very important. And if your college wants to, because in Osmania University, I think I heard that around 700 affiliated colleges are there. And if any of these 700 colleges wants to become an autonomous college, without accreditation, they cannot become autonomous college at all. And if autonomous college wants to become a deemed university, again accreditation is a prerequisite. Because now, as per national education policy is concerned, they are planning to identify some of the autonomous colleges, especially the colleges which got A+ grade and above, A+ or A++ grade. Those colleges would be automatically converted into autonomous colleges, and they are planning to empower them to grant their own degrees. Because right now autonomous colleges cannot grant degrees. It is not degree awarding institution. But as per NEP is concerned, National Education Policy is concerned, they can grant their own degrees if they have A+ grade or A++ grade. That is a radical change. That would be a revolution in our country. And also the gross enrollment ratio also, they are planning to increase from 26.8% at present as per 2018 to 50%, 50% by 2030. I think that is a very major step in the field of higher education. I can think this is a radical step taken by Government of India. This is very important, because more access can be given to very many students. Equity also can be considered. Inclusion also can be considered. And also quality education. They are planning to impart high quality, premium quality education to as many students as possible. Because earlier, I think India was considered as Vishwa Guru. Again, as per national education policy is concerned, we are planning to regain that status of Vishwa Guru. That's why they are giving more emphasis on internationalization. They are planning to go for global study destination, providing premium education at affordable cost to as many students as possible across the globe. In that way, very many foreign students, I mean overseas students, can come to India and they can study at a very affordable cost. The two very good quality education. Once if we do it, maybe for a decade or two, definitely India will become again Vishwa Guru. That is the final objective of this national educational policy. That is very, very important step. And now see, especially they are giving more emphasis on experiential learning and also this multidisciplinary approach. Because right now our education system is very, very rigid. For example, if I join for BSc Physics, then I should study only physics. I don't have any scope to study some other subject. But as per NEP is concerned, because of multidisciplinary approach or interdisciplinary approach, even if I'm a physics student, if I have the passion for music or dance, I can study that also as a minor subject. In that way, I can continue my passion, I can develop different skills, and also the idea is to inculcate very many skills among the students. And by chance, if a student is interested in photography, he might be a science student or commerce student, but he can take any other minor subject as his passion. In that way, the passion may become profession also. Maybe he might be a very good photographer. Then he may become National Geographic photographer. Why he has to study only mathematics, or why he has to study only engineering? That's why, maybe because of compulsion right now, because of the parental pressure, because of the peer pressure, maybe our students might be taking maybe engineering as their, even though they are not interested, they might be opting for engineering or medicine or whatever. But here, because of the multidisciplinary approach, lot of opportunities would be available to different students. This is a very much welcoming step to all the students in the country. But only thing is, implementation is not so easy, because especially destination is very, very rosy, especially as per national education policy is concerned. Destination is very good, it looks very rosy, but implementation, right now we are silent, but still implementation is also equally important. I feel in the beginning, all academic leaders, I think capacity building of academic leaders should be there. Once the capacity building of all the academic leaders in all the higher education institutions is done, definitely in turn, they can motivate, they can create awareness about national education policy in different parts of the country. In that way, they can realize the benefits of national education policy, and they can tell different stakeholders in their own institutions. That's why capacity building of academic leaders of all the higher education institutions is very, very important. And also, now digital innovative initiatives are mandatory. See, indirectly, NAC has contributed very significantly to the field of higher education. Don't think that we are giving just grades. See, now in 2000, because of COVID-19 pandemic situation, most of the higher education institutions might be going for online mode of education. Maybe NAC's intuition might be very, very strong, I can say. That's why in 2017 itself, we had gone for online mode of accreditation. Because as per the revised accreditation framework is concerned, now it is online accreditation only, because about 70% of the quantitative metrics would be evaluated by seeing your data, and also it would be done online. Because DVV is there is data validation and verification process is there. As per this process is concerned, whatever the data you submit to NAC, we don't validate and verify at NAC level. Here, because we want to be very much unbiased, we want to be totally transparent. That's why we have identified a third party for validation and verification of the data submitted by your higher education institutions. We call these partners as DVV partners, that is data validation and verification partners, because now everything is online. As per our earlier methodology before 2017, we were asking all the higher education institutions to submit their self-study report offline. That I mean, in the hard copy form. Now we have done away with this hard copy business. Now we are asking all the higher education institutions to submit everything online. By chance, if a particular affiliated college of Osmania University wants to come forward for the course of assessment accreditation, the first step is they should register. Even registration is also online. They cannot send one letter to NAC. They have to go to NAC's portal, NAC's website, and they have to open NAC's portal. The moment they make the registration, definitely they will get their login ID and password credentials. And this is just like your passport. You should keep this login ID and password for future correspondence with NAC. And on daily basis, you have to look at this your NAC's portal, and that's why we want to inculcate digital awareness among all the stakeholders in the country. Because if you want to communicate to any institution, we don't have any other mode of communication at all. Because right now we have 50,000 plus higher education institutions in the country. Because for all 50,000 colleges, it is humanly impossible to communicate. That's why, because we have to give customized instructions, customized information to different higher education institutions. That's why I request all higher education institutions to see NAC's portal on daily basis, at least once a day. Because anyway, you are seeing your WhatsApp multiple number of times. But for NAC's portal, at least you see at least once a day. If you see once a day, whatever the instructions we give, the instructions you follow meticulously, especially timelines you have to adhere. And see, now I was telling you about registration. Then afterwards, next step will be IIQA, that is Institutional Information for Quality Assessment. That also would be online, digitally you have to submit. Then thereafter you have to submit your self-study report. Self-study report is also online. And thereafter, if you have not submitted documents in a particular sequence or in a particular pattern, then you may get some clarification from the DVV partner. When they write some clarifications, you will get exactly 15 days. By any chance, if you don't submit in 15 days, on 15th day night at 12 p.m., automatically the document would get submitted to NAC. Then later, you may not have access to your NAC's portal. You may not be able to submit any additional documents. That's why I'm cautioning all the higher education institutions to adhere to these timelines very, very meticulously. Otherwise, whatever the documents you don't submit for some of the quantitative metrics, for those metrics, your institution would be getting 0. Why unnecessarily you should lose those marks for those metrics? That's why very meticulously within the stipulated period, please submit that one. And during this process of quality assurance, we are creating a lot of digital, innovative awareness among all the stakeholders, among all the higher education institutions in the country. See, in the beginning, when the revised accreditation framework had been launched by NAC, at that point of time, there were very many apprehensions because they were telling so many excuses. See, we don't have computers, we don't have electricity, we don't have internet facilities, or we a lot of uninterrupted internet is not available. Like this, they were giving so many excuses. Even I totally agree, because especially if you go to northeastern region, you forget internet. Even getting full power full time, that itself is a luxury. But still, amidst all these challenges, amidst all these difficulties, still higher education institutions are learning this digital awareness, and they are appreciating of the benefits of this revised accreditation framework, and they are coming forward for the course of assessment accreditation in a very big way. That itself is a good contribution from NAC to the higher education field. That's why NAC has attained some credibility. And NAC, because at least among different government organizations, I think NAC is one of the very good government organizations, I can say, because NAC is very quick in responding also. See, we have created another digital innovative initiative. For example, it's IMS, Issue Management System. If a particular college or university wants some specific information from NAC, at that point of time, just you can raise an issue in the issue management system in the NAC's portal. Within 24 hours, you are going to get the response. Can you tell me which government agency can give this type of response in 24 hours? That's why very few government agencies might be giving this type of response. NAC might be one of that type of dynamic government organizations to give response in 24 hours. By any chance, if you are not happy with that response, again you can raise issue in the IMS, the issue management system in the NAC's portal. Still, if you are not happy, you can send an email to NAC, or even our help desk is there. You can pick up the phone and call us, and we will help you. Or there will be different coordinating officers. You can speak to those coordinating officers, and your problems would be resolved. If you need any specific clarification, it is not very difficult to get that type of clarifications from NAC, because we are trying to create this digital awareness. Because NAC has taken very many digital innovative initiatives, and we are imparting these digital innovative initiatives among various stakeholders. That might be one of the USP of NAC. Because see, now NAC has conducted more than 250-300 webinars across the country. Maybe when before this COVID-19 pandemic, NAC had not conducted not even a single webinar, because NAC had not hosted this webinar at all. Even in NAC, we didn't have the digital platform itself. And most of the universities and colleges also, I don't think they had digital platform. Still, I think this digital literacy we have to create in the country. Because see, even before the commencement of this particular program also, I was seeing some of the participants, they were not muting their systems, they were unmuting. And some of the people were speaking in between. This is a digital literacy, because we might be very much literate. Maybe in our subject we might be having expertise, but in the ICT, information communication technology, we may not have adequate etiquette, because getting this etiquette is also very much important. See, now you might be participating in different webinars across the globe. Sitting in your home, you can participate in any of the webinars in any part of the world. I think that is the beauty of this digital platform, because that is the power. Because earlier, see, now as per the national education policy is concerned, Government of India is planning to increase our expenditure towards education to 6% of GDP. Correct? That is very important. Maybe in the days to come, because overnight, tomorrow morning, they cannot spend 6% of the GDP, because the Government of India might be having very many priorities. But in my opinion, that so much resources is not very much essential in the beginning, because for some of the things you don't need resources at all. For example, I was telling about academic bank of credit. It is non-financial initiative. Tell me, why do we need so much resources? Very minimal resources. It requires our mental bent of mind, mental framework. If we are willing, definitely we can do it. Where there is a will, there is a way. That's why the success of NEP lies in the hands of all of us, because each one of us should take initiative. Each one of us should be alert, and because there should be a concerted effort from all the universities and colleges. Do you think only our Prime Minister can implement this education policy? You are wrong. Only one person cannot do. Each one of us should be Modis. There cannot be only one Modi. If there is only one Modi, then if you think only Modi should implement national education policy, then all of us would be wrong. That's why each one of us should think that we are all the stakeholders, and we should go for concerted efforts. All vice chancellors in the country, all principals of all the colleges should take initiative to implement this national education policy. Then only a national education policy will be very much successful, and all our children would be benefited to the greater extent. Otherwise, it will be a failure. It will be a futile exercise. Only couple of academicians might be taking this much initiative, and if we are lackadaisical and if we are not taking any initiative, the very purpose of launching this national education policy would be lost. That's why all of us are responsible. See, even if we want to implement some of the best practices, do you think only your principal should implement best practices, or your vice chancellor should implement best practices? Take your Usmania University. Where is the vice chancellor? He is only in charge vice chancellor, some IAS officer. He might be having multiple portfolios. Do you think he can come to your university every day and implement all the best practices? It is humanly impossible. Even for the regular vice chancellor also it is very difficult. When that is the case, right now maybe our system is like that. Maybe your vice chancellor of Usmania University is an IAS officer, because definitely he has got tremendous, terrific tension, terrific tasks in his hand. I don't think he can come to every day. He can. The only thing is he can bank upon some of the stakeholders in Usmania University, and whatever the suggestions you give, he may accept. He may support your initiatives. Then only, because if you don't take initiatives voluntarily, do you think many best practices can come to Usmania University and our students will be benefited? No. That's why all of us are responsible. See, now Government of India wants to make many colleges which get A+ grade to autonomous colleges, and also they are planning to make degree granting institutions. For that, your institutions may grant degrees. At the same time, lot of accountability, lot of responsibility also would be attached to all the autonomous colleges. Because accountability, without responsibility, if you grant degrees, again it will be a futile exercise. Because you can go for your own curriculum, you can see the job market, whatever the subjects which are relevant to the job market, you can think about those subjects, then you can impart that type of skill education to your students, then definitely your students would be very much benefited and they would be employable, they would be in greater demand. Just only if you give some traditional subjects education, and if they do not get any skill, and if they would be becoming irrelevant or redundant to the society, they may not get any jobs. Tell me, by chance, see, now you send any student with good communication and good ICT, definitely getting a job is not very difficult in any part of the city, if they have these two skills. In the same way, if students get additional skills which are vocational, job oriented, then getting a job is not very difficult. That's why certain set of students would get very high profile jobs, and most of the students would not get any jobs because of unskilled education. Because that's why in whatever they study, if they get some sort of skill, that's why they should sharpen their skills during maybe first year itself. They should identify in which discipline they have the interest. By any chance, if they want to change the discipline, even in the second year also they can go for minor subject. I was telling music, because I am very much interested in music, I can go for music. Or if I am very good at dance, I can go for dance. Or if I am interested in photography, okay, go for photography. Then your students will become more relevant in the society. And also see, these best practices also can be done at the individual level and the institutional level. See, now then you can ask, what is best practice? Definitely best practices have not come from the sky. Because best practices we have to identify. In my opinion, best practices are those practices which can contribute significantly to your institution can be called best practices. Or best practices can be called innovative practices, good practices, next practices, whatever you want to call, the terminology might be immaterial. And once if you identify these best practices, that has to be institutionalized and internalized. Institutionalization means making the best practices an integral part of the institution is called institutionalization. And making the best practices an integral part of the individual is called internalization. And see, now I will give a small example. See how you can contribute, because most of you are teachers, maybe assistant professors, associate professors, or professors. Tell me in what way you may ask me, in what way I can identify best practices, in what way I can contribute to my institution, you may ask. I will give a simple example. See, now NAC has identified very many initiatives. See, for example, solar lighting scheme. Because solar lighting or solar heating, solar street lighting, solar strip lighting for beautification, these are some of the simple things. In many universities, they might have adopted this solar lighting. What is solar lighting? Solar lighting maybe because most of the rooftops of different universities might be vacant. And in universities, you might have gone for solar lighting. Because on the other hand, I went to some Anantapur University, some Anantapur Technological University. It's called Rajiv Gandhi something. That's in Anantapur. I went to that university, and the vice chancellor took a lot of initiative, and they were tapping lot of solar power by putting a solar grid on the top of some of the buildings, maybe auditorium or somewhere. In the same way, what I thought is you can motivate some of your students, some of your teachers to go for this type of solar grid. Maybe I think they cannot go for a very big plant, maybe 5 kilowatt plant or 10 kilowatt plant. Then if they go for that, definitely they can generate a lot of solar power. In that way, we can avoid this solar, like this one, the power deficit, because in most of the states, power deficit is there. And once if we motivate our students, those students who are well worthy, maybe rich enough, at least they can start. I'm not telling that all students should go for solar plants. It may not be economically viable to all of us. That's why at least those students who are rich enough, those people who can afford, maybe at least some of our teachers, because it may not cost much, maybe 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs from plant. Because in 5 years time, definitely that can be reaped back. That's why solar power can be harvested very effectively. And if you can motivate maybe just say 25% or 30% of our students and teachers, definitely you would be a very responsible person. You would be contributing not only to your institution, definitely you would be contributing an addition to all your students and teachers, not only for your institution, but also for the society or even for the country as a whole. In that way, there are so many best practices. Depending upon your local context, you can identify any of the best practices and you can motivate all your stakeholders to implement. In this way, there are very many things, and NAC has taken very many initiatives. And for all these details, anyway, I have given you an overall helicopter view, but my very learned colleagues are there because I have 3 learned colleagues. One is Professor Dr. Pratibha Singh. She will be participating from Delhi office. Now she is the Delhi NAC office head, and she is going to throw very many lights, especially with respect to revised accreditation framework, how to make the registration, how to submit your IIQA. In that way, she gives the holistic idea about the entire process of assessment and accreditation. She is a very dynamic senior deputy advisor from NAC, and she is knowledgeable, and definitely all the participants would be very much benefited for her presentation. Thereafter, we have another young and dynamic officer, that is Dr. Vishnu Mahesh. He would be sharing his thoughts or insights about data validation verification, how to submit self-study report, all these things he would be narrating. Then thereafter, we have one more dynamic and young officer, and he is also a very knowledgeable officer. His name is Dr. Darikan Kamble. He is going to tell about PRT visits, what you should do during PRT visit, what you should not do during the PRT visit, and how would be the logistics, and how our team would be visiting your institution, all this, and also what would be the accreditation outcome. All these things he would be telling. In that way, before we sign off from this particular webinar, you would be getting very many insights about the gamut of quality assurance. That way, I hope this webinar will be of great help to all the participants. And also, I have a request for all the participants. Right now, I think about 163 participants are there. I request all the participants to transfer this idea to other stakeholders in the vicinity, because Osmania University has got 700 colleges. There might be so many not accredited colleges also, and that's why I request all the participants to share this quality assurance knowledge with other stakeholders of non-accredited colleges. In that way, all of us will be benefited, and cumulatively, quality culture can be inculcated among all the stakeholders in different parts of the country. Anyway, there are many institutions, as rightly pointed out by Professor Nageshwar Rao, that there are many people from Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and also Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. I think many institutions will be benefited. I wish all the higher education institutions all the very best to reach the pinnacle on the plateau of higher education. Thank you very much. Now I request my colleague, Dr. Pratibha Singh, to take over. Over to Dr. Pratibha Singh.
Thank you very much, sir. Madam, thank you very much, sir.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah.